I met Daniel at the campus coffee shop where we both worked our way through university in Boston. He wasn't the kind of guy who commanded a room. He was solid, earnest. The type who showed up 15 minutes early for his shift and meticulously read every new memo pinned to the corkboard. Most of the other men I'd known were flashes of lightning. Exciting, unpredictable, and gone just as quickly. Daniel was different. He was the steady glow of a hearth, stability. After a childhood spent navigating the emotional minefield of my parents' explosive divorce, Daniel's predictability felt less like boredom and more like a sanctuary. When he said he'd call, the phone rang at exactly the time he said it would. When he talked about the future, it wasn't a vague, romantic notion. It was a plan with logical, achievable steps. We dated for 3 years before he proposed. Even then, he was cautious. His own parents had split when he was 12, a quiet, devastating implosion that left him wary of grand gestures. He wanted to be sure, absolutely sure. I appreciated that. Daniel wasn't a man who rushed into anything without thinking it through from every possible angle. When we finally married, I knew he saw it as a lifelong covenant. That kind of devotion is rare. I wasn't foolish enough to take it for granted. The first few years were a gentle unfolding. Daniel was a financial planner at a local credit union, helping people map out their futures. He supported my decision to go back to school for my master's in literature, even when it meant our finances were stretched thin and I was gone for evening classes 3 nights a week. He'd have dinner waiting when I got home. He'd ask about my professors and my thesis topic with a genuine curiosity that I found both endearing and a little sad. I could see in his eyes that he didn't truly understand why I found postmodern narrative theory so captivating, but he tried. And that meant everything. I got pregnant soon after, which wasn't exactly planned, but felt like a natural next step. Daniel was over the moon. He bought parenting books and started assembling a crib before I was even showing. Watching him, so serious and focused, reading instructions and carefully tightening each screw, made me fall in love with him all over again. This was what I wanted, a partner who would be completely devoted to our family. But graduate school was opening a door inside me I hadn't known existed. The other students were older, more worldly. They talked about books as if they were living things, as if they held the power to reshape the world. I'd come home, buzzing with ideas from class discussions, trying to explain Foucault or feminist literary criticism. Daniel would nod and smile, but we both knew he was just being polite. The connection would fizzle out, lost in the gap between my world and his. That's when I met him. Professor Alistair Finch. He was a visiting scholar from England, auditing one of my seminars while working on his own research. He was older than me by at least 10 years, with a quiet confidence that came from actually knowing things, from having lived a life outside the quiet streets of our university town. When he disagreed with our professor about the role of the unreliable narrator in modernist fiction, he didn't just raise his hand. He spoke with a soft authority that made the entire room lean forward, captivated. After class, he approached me. "Your comment on narrative fragmentation," he said, his accent clipping the words precisely, was the most incisive thing anyone has said all semester. When was the last time Daniel had called anything I said incisive? When was the last time Daniel had even used that word? Alistair suggested we get coffee to continue the discussion. And for the first time in what felt like years, I felt a spark. A genuine, intellectual fire. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into long walks across the campus green, the autumn leaves crunching under our feet as we talked about books and ideas and ambition. He had lived in Paris, had published articles in journals I only dreamed of reading. He treated my opinions like they mattered, like I was a peer. With Daniel, I always felt like I had to translate myself, to simplify my thoughts so he could follow along. With Alistair, I could be my most complex, analytical self. I knew where it was heading. I felt the pull, the dangerous gravity of it, but I told myself it was just an intellectual friendship, an academic kinship. Daniel was at home, reading about infant sleep schedules, being his usual responsible self. And here was this fascinating man who wanted to discuss the intersection of gender and power over a glass of wine at 11 at night. Was I really supposed to pretend that wasn't more stimulating than conversations about diaper brands? The night it happened, I told Daniel I was staying late at the library to work on my thesis. It wasn't technically a lie. I had planned to. But Alistair had invited me to his temporary apartment to see some rare first editions he'd acquired for his research. The chance to hold books I'd only read about in academic papers was too tempting to resist. At least, that's what I told myself. One glass of wine became two. And before I knew it, he was sitting closer to me on the sofa, his hand on my knee as he explained the significance of marginalia in an early edition of The Wasteland. His voice was a low murmur. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and Cabernet. When he kissed me, I should have stopped it. I should have thought of Daniel at home, probably assembling the changing table, his brow furrowed in concentration. But I didn't think about Daniel. For once, I wasn't thinking about anyone else's needs or expectations. I was just there, present in a moment with someone who saw me as more than a wife and a future mother. It was purely physical. That's what I kept telling myself afterward. A brief, meaningless collision. It didn't mean anything beyond two adults enjoying each other's company for a few hours. Alistair wasn't looking for a relationship any more than I was looking to leave my marriage. We were both getting something we needed, an intellectual connection with a physical component, and then we would both go back to our regular lives. No harm done. I went home to Daniel that night and slipped into bed next to him. I watched him sleep peacefully, completely unaware that anything had changed. And really, nothing had. I still loved Daniel. I still wanted our baby, our life together. What had happened with Alistair was completely separate. Like reading a really good book that transports you somewhere else for a few hours, but doesn't make you want to abandon your real life. Daniel never suspected a thing. Why would he? I wasn't acting guilty or distant. If anything, I was more affectionate than usual, grateful for his steadiness after the intensity of being with Alistair. When Alistair finished his research and left town a few weeks later, I felt a little sad, but mostly relieved. It had been a beautiful, fleeting interlude, but it was over. Now I could focus completely on my family. Our daughter Chloe was born 8 months later. And Daniel was the most devoted father I had ever seen. He got up for every middle of the night feeding. He changed every diaper without a word of complaint. He would spend hours just staring at her in her crib, his face filled with a kind of quiet wonder. Watching him with our daughter, I knew, with absolute certainty, that I had made the right choice in marrying him. Biology is just genetics. Real fatherhood is about showing up every single day. And Daniel showed up in ways that impressed even me. For 16 years, our life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Daniel worked his steady job at the credit union. My writing career slowly took off, and I published my first novel, then a second. Chloe grew into this amazing teenager, smart, funny, with an artist's eye. She had somehow inherited the best qualities from both of us. Or at least, the best qualities from me and the man who had actually raised her. Daniel was the dad who never missed a school play, who helped with every impossible math assignment, who knew all of Chloe's friends by name and remembered their birthdays. When I had to travel for book tours and literary conferences, he handled everything at home without ever making me feel guilty. He understood that my work was important to me, even if he didn't always understand the work itself. Sometimes, I'd catch him looking at Chloe with this expression of complete, unconditional adoration, and I'd feel a tiny flutter of something that might have been guilt. But then I'd remind myself that he was her real father. In every way that mattered. He'd been there for every milestone, every scraped knee, every teenage drama. The fact that they didn't share a few strands of DNA was irrelevant. If anything, his love for her was more meaningful because it was chosen. It wasn't just biological instinct. It was a conscious, daily decision. Last spring, I was away on a book tour for nearly 3 weeks. It was going well. Good crowds, positive reviews. Daniel and Chloe held down the fort at home, sending me pictures of their cooking disasters and movie nights. When I got back, Chloe was practically bouncing with excitement. "I got us something," she announced, holding up a small box. "It's one of those DNA testing kits. I thought it would be fun to see where we all come from. Maybe we'll find some interesting family history." My first reaction was a cold, sharp panic. I tried to hide it. "Oh, why didn't you wait for me?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Chloe looked hurt. Daniel gave me a puzzled look, unable to understand my lack of enthusiasm. I tried to backtrack, mumbling about privacy concerns, suggesting we should research the company before sending them our genetic information. But it was too late. Chloe, with her infectious enthusiasm, had already convinced Daniel. They'd both spit into their little tubes like it was the most natural thing in the world. They were looking at me, expectantly, waiting for me to join their fun family science experiment. What choice did I have? If I refused, it would be far more suspicious than just going along with it. So, I did the test. I sealed up my tube and mailed it off, telling myself that maybe, after 16 years, the results wouldn't be conclusive. Maybe it was too long ago for anyone to ever know for sure. But of course, that's not how genetics works. When the results came back, Daniel and Chloe opened them together on his laptop, both of them excited to compare their ancestry percentages. I hovered in the background, trying to make small talk, my heart hammering against my ribs. Chloe was already pulling up the family connection features. Daniel was staring at the screen. His smile faded. He kept refreshing the page, a deep frown line forming between his eyebrows. "This is weird," he said finally. His voice was flat. "It's showing Chloe as my niece, not my daughter." Chloe laughed. "That's obviously a mistake. These things aren't perfect, right, Mom?" I made some non-committal sound about technology being unreliable. But Daniel wasn't letting it go. He had pulled up the help section and was reading, getting quieter and more focused with every paragraph. The color drained from his face. That night, after Chloe went to bed, he didn't say a word about it. We went through our normal routine. He did the dishes while I pretended to grade some student papers. We watched half an episode of some crime show we both liked. We brushed our teeth and got ready for bed, just like any other Tuesday. But the silence was different. It was heavy. I could feel him thinking. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head, connecting 16 years of memories to this one impossible piece of data. The silence was the beginning of the punishment. The next morning, after Chloe had left for school, Daniel was in the kitchen. He had his laptop open on the counter. His face was pale but determined. "We need to talk about this," he said, turning the screen toward me. I was trembling. The words wouldn't come. After 16 years of never having to explain myself, I didn't even know where to start. "It was a long time ago," I finally managed, my voice a whisper. "Before Chloe was born. I didn't know the guy. It wasn't anything special. It was purely physical, just something that happened once." Daniel stared at me. He looked at me like he had never seen me before. "You're telling me you had an affair?" "It wasn't an affair," I insisted, my voice rising with desperation. "It was one afternoon with someone from my graduate program, an older guy I barely knew. It didn't mean anything." "Daniel, you're Chloe's real father. You're the only father she's ever known." But I could see it in his eyes. Something fundamental had shattered. He wasn't angry, not yet. He was just distant, as if he was looking at a stranger who happened to be wearing his wife's face. "The entire dynamic of our family has changed," he said quietly. "Everything I thought I knew about our life together, none of it was real." "That's not true," I cried. "Our life is real. Our family is real. Chloe loves you, Daniel. You raised her. You are her father." But he was already shaking his head, already pulling away from me emotionally in a way that made my chest tight with panic. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. He was supposed to be upset, yes. But then he was supposed to realize that our family was more important than some genetic technicality from 16 years ago. Instead, he went upstairs. I followed him, my words tumbling out in a useless stream, trying to make him understand that he was overreacting, that we could work through this. He wouldn't even look at me. He just opened his suitcase and started folding clothes, methodically, precisely, like I wasn't even there. "Where are you going?" I demanded. "I don't know," he said, his voice hollow. "But I can't be here right now." He left before Chloe got home from school, just packed his bag and drove away, like our 17 years together meant nothing. When Chloe came through the door that afternoon, asking where her dad's car was, I had to tell her. I had to explain that her father had left because of something I had done before she was even born. The look on her face broke my heart into a million pieces. She immediately blamed herself. She was convinced that buying the DNA kits had somehow caused this. When Daniel finally called her that evening, I could hear her sobbing through the phone. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I didn't know this would happen." Daniel filed for divorce within a week, not separation, divorce. Like there was no possibility of repair, no chance of rebuilding what we'd had. During the proceedings, he was frustratingly reasonable. He didn't fight me for the house, he didn't ask for spousal support. He just wanted out, as quickly and cleanly as possible. His civility was more painful than any fight would have been. At least anger would have meant he still cared enough to feel something. This was just absence. The divorce was finalized 3 months ago. I thought that would be the end of it. But Daniel wasn't done. Last month, I started getting calls. My agent, asking about personal issues that might affect my professional reputation. My publisher, wanting to schedule a meeting to discuss my public image. I didn't understand until I started getting notifications. New reviews on my books, 1-star reviews, dozens of them. All mentioning my character issues and suggesting that readers might want to reconsider supporting my work. Someone had posted the whole story. On Goodreads forums, in Facebook groups for book lovers, even in the Amazon review sections of my novels. Not just the basic facts, but details. Details about the timeline, about Chloe's reaction, about how I'd hidden the truth for 16 years. It didn't take a genius to figure out who was behind it. Daniel had systematically contacted everyone in my professional network. My agent, my publisher, the owners of bookstores that had hosted my events. He told them everything. He presented himself as the betrayed husband who had devoted his life to raising another man's child, while his wife built her career on a foundation of lies. My publisher dropped me. My agent stopped returning my calls. The novel I'd been working on for 2 years suddenly had no home. No one wanted to be associated with me. When I called Daniel to confront him, his voice was calm. Matter of fact, I'm just making sure people know who they're really dealing with, he said. You built your whole life on deception, Olivia. I thought your professional contacts should have all the relevant information. Chloe's 17th birthday was last month. Daniel didn't come. He sent a card and a gift, but he wouldn't come to the house. He wouldn't sit in the same room with me, even for his daughter's sake. I could see Chloe checking her phone all night, hoping he'd change his mind. He has pulled back from her too. He still talks to her. Helps with homework over video calls, but it's different. More distant. Like he can't separate his anger at me from his feelings about her, even though none of this is her fault. Last week, after too much wine and too much loneliness, I called him. We should get back together, I told him, the words feeling clumsy in my mouth. Not for us. For her. She needs both of her parents. He was quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. Finally, he spoke. His voice was cold and clear, with no trace of emotion. Chloe has one parent, he said. You. I was just borrowing her for 16 years. That's when I lost it. You ruined my career, I screamed into the phone. You destroyed my reputation over something that happened 16 years ago. You walked away from your daughter because your pride was hurt. I walked away because my entire life was a lie, he replied, his voice still unnervingly calm. And your career was built on people thinking they knew who you were. I just made sure they had accurate information. He hung up. We haven't spoken since. So here I am. Living alone in the house he paid half the mortgage on for 15 years. Watching my professional reputation crumble to dust because my ex-husband decided that destroying my life was appropriate revenge for one mistake. One mistake I made when I was barely out of college. Chloe is distant now, too. She spends more time at friends' houses. Last week, she asked if she could spend the summer with my sister instead of staying here with me. She blames herself for the DNA kits, but I know she also blames me for creating the lie in the first place. I keep thinking about that afternoon with Alistair, how free and intelligent and alive I felt for those few hours. Was it worth it? At the time, it felt like such a small thing. A brief connection with someone who understood a part of me that Daniel never could. I never intended for it to hurt anyone. I never planned for it to define the rest of my life. But Daniel can't see it that way. To him, every moment of the last 16 years has been contaminated. Every birthday party, every bedtime story, every proud moment watching Chloe grow up, all of it is ruined for him because he knows she isn't biologically his. What he doesn't understand is that biology doesn't make someone a parent. Love does. Showing up every day does. Daniel was Chloe's real father, regardless of genetics. But his ego couldn't handle the truth. So he decided to blow up our entire family instead. Now, my career is in ruins. My daughter barely speaks to me. And the man I spent 17 years building a life with acts like I'm a stranger. All because he couldn't handle the fact that his wife had a past. Couldn't accept that one afternoon, 16 years ago, had nothing to do with the family we built together. I made one mistake. One. And he has decided that mistake defines everything. He's thrown away 17 years of marriage, walked away from the daughter who worships him, and destroyed my professional reputation because his feelings were hurt. Chloe will be 18 soon. She'll be off to college, probably as far away from this mess as she can get. Daniel will continue his new life, feeling justified in everything he's done. And I'll be here, starting over at 42, trying to rebuild a career and a reputation that took me 2 decades to establish. But I won't let him win. I am stronger than he thinks. I will find a new publisher. I will repair my relationship with my daughter. And maybe, someday, he will realize what he threw away. What he destroyed over a bruised ego and a piece of paper from a lab. I made one mistake 16 years ago. I refuse to let his inability to forgive destroy everything I've worked for since.